It was supposed to be a romantic dinner, a milestone for us. Instead, he shattered my world, not just with a public breakup, but by laughing with his friends as they left me with the bill. My credit card maxed, my heart shredded. I saw him then, truly saw him for the first time, and something else lurking beneath his smile. What would you do next? Like, share and tell me where you're watching from. I need to know I'm not alone. I remember getting ready for that dinner like it was yesterday. It wasn't just a dinner, it was the dinner. Liam had been so vague about it, calling it a work thing, but that saying he wanted me there. I took it as a sign, a step forward for us. I'd spent hours, probably too many, trying on outfits, finally settling on a new sapphire blue dress that made me feel confident, special. I wanted to impress his colleagues, to show them the amazing woman Liam was supposedly with. I remember the flutter in my stomach, the nervous excitement as I hailed the cab. The restaurant was one of those places with hushed lighting and prices that made my eyes water, just looking at the menu online. Liam had made the reservation, of course. When I arrived, a little breathless and exactly 5 minutes late, I spotted him immediately. He was already seated at a table near the back, laughing with Marcus and Ben, two of his senior colleagues he'd mentioned before. My smile faltered a little as I approached, feeling a prickle of unease. He didn't stand up. He didn't even really acknowledge me beyond a glance. "You're late," he said, the words flat, devoid of any warmth. Then his eyes drifted over my new dress, the one I'd chosen so carefully. "Oh, you wore that?" The way he said that made it sound like a costume. My face, which had been beaming moments before, felt like it was on fire. I tried to laugh it off, pretending his comments were just his awkward humor. "Traffic was a nightmare," I mumbled, sliding into the empty seat beside him. The air around the table felt suddenly thick, heavy. He didn't miss a beat. For the rest of the appetizers, Liam dominated the conversation, his voice booming over mine every time I attempted to contribute. He spoke about his latest projects with grandiosity, dropping names and figures that made Marcus and Ben nod along dutifully. When I tried to talk about my own work, a small victory I'd had that week, he just waved a hand dismissively. "Alara's just in marketing," and he'd say, stretching out the word as if it were some quaint, unimportant hobby, not my entire career. I felt my shoulders slump, the sapphire dress suddenly feeling like a burden, not a shield of confidence. At one point, Marcus, bless his heart, tried to bridge the gap. "So Liam, how did you two meet?" he asked, a friendly smile directed at me. I started to explain, to tell our story, about the coffee shop, the spilled latte, the cheesy pickup line that had somehow worked. But Liam cut me off, a smirk playing on his lips. "Chloe felt bad for her, honestly," he interjected, a cruel glint in his eyes. "I was doing a favor, really." And then he laughed, a loud, artificial sound, and Marcus and Ben joined in, a little too quickly. My stomach churned. A favor? My blood ran cold, and the embarrassment burned deeper than before. Chloe, my best friend, had introduced us, but there was no pity involved. This was a deliberate, vicious lie. I mumbled an excuse about needing the restroom, practically bolting from the table. The ornate bathroom felt like a sanctuary, a place where the air wasn't poisoned by his condescension. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone, immediately texting Chloe, "Sorry, Liam just said he dated me as a favor because you felt sorry for me." The WTF? I stared at the message, waiting for her frantic reply. But before it came, a notification popped up. Liam's Instagram, a new post. It was a selfie of him, Marcus, and Ben, all grinning. The caption, "Boys' night out." Not a single mention of me, even though I was literally 30 feet away. It was a punch to the gut. He hadn't even pretended I was part of their evening. My eyes welled up, but I refused to cry. Not here. Not yet. I took a deep breath, splashed water on my face, and returned to the table, my fake smile feeling brittle. Liam didn't even notice my absence. He was in full flow, detailing some incredibly complex, borderline unbelievable client deal. When the waiter brought out my pasta, a dish I loved, Liam snorted. "Still eating like a bird, Alara. You need to put some meat on those bones." Another round of forced chuckles from his colleagues. The pasta suddenly tasted like ash. As he continued his inflated stories, something shifted. It wasn't just the usual Liam exaggeration. There was a particular intensity in his eyes when he talked about closing a deal, a strange, almost manic gleam. His stories felt too perfect, too convenient, and a chill snaked down my spine. It was a gut feeling, a tiny whisper of wrongness that went beyond his usual arrogance. I tried to shake it off, dismissing it as my anger twisting my perception, but it lingered, an unsettling hum beneath the surface of the loud restaurant. Then the bill arrived, a thick leather folder placed squarely in the middle of the table. Liam picked it up, glanced at the total, 347, and then, with a casual flick of his wrist, slid it towards me. His eyes, suddenly devoid of any emotion, met mine. "You know what? I don't think this is working," he said, his voice quiet, almost bored. "I'm just not attracted to you anymore. I think we should break up." My world tilted. The noise of the restaurant faded into a distant hum. My mouth felt dry, my voice barely a whisper. "Are you serious right now? This is how you want to do this?" My gaze darted to Marcus and Ben, who were suddenly intensely interested in their bread rolls. Shame, hot and stinging, washed over me. Liam pushed his chair back, grabbing his jacket. "A girl like you should be grateful I even dated you this long. You're not exactly a prize." His words were a hammer blow, each one designed to inflict maximum damage. He turned, a victorious smirk on his face, and Marcus and Ben scrambled to follow, throwing me quick, pitying glances that only amplified the humiliation. I heard their laughter as they walked away, fading into the bustling restaurant. Liam, Marcus, and Ben, leaving me utterly alone with a half-eaten pasta dish, an empty chair, and the $304 bill. The waiter, who had witnessed the entire spectacle, approached with an expression of profound sympathy. My hands trembled as I pulled out my credit card. It was maxed out. I knew it was. But I had to pay. I couldn't just leave. The transaction went through, a silent testament to my financial and emotional ruin. As I walked out, the cool night air hit me, but it did nothing to quench the fire in my cheeks. My fingers, still shaking, fumbled for my phone, calling the one person who would understand, the only person I could trust. "Chloe," I sobbed, the dam finally breaking. "Chloe, he..." My voice dissolved into uncontrollable tears, the words lost in a torrent of pain and disbelief. The hours after the restaurant were a blur of raw emotion. My apartment, usually a haven, felt like a cage. Tissues littered the floor like fallen snow, testament to the tsunami of tears that had racked my body. One moment I was curled on the couch, shaking with sobs. The next I was pacing, a hot, furious anger bubbling up inside me. How dare he? How dare he humiliate me like that? The sapphire dress lay discarded in a heap, a cruel reminder of the hopes I'd had just hours before. My phone felt like a magnet, constantly pulling my gaze. I hovered over Liam's contact, my thumb itching to type out a furious, heartbroken message. But then the images would flood back. His sneer, the cold dismissal, the laughter of him and his friends echoing as they walked away. Each memory was a fresh knife twist, and I'd pull my hand back, the urge to confront him, battling with the paralyzing pain of reliving the breakup all over again. He wasn't worth another tear, another ounce of my energy. Eventually, though, my anger won out over my despair. I needed to see what he was doing. What kind of monster moved on so quickly? With a trembling hand, I forced myself to open Instagram. And there it was. Just as I expected, yet somehow worse. A gym selfie, flexing, grinning with some vapid caption about leveling up and new beginnings. My blood boiled. He was celebrating my public humiliation, celebrating breaking my heart. The disgust was a bitter taste in my mouth, burning away the last vestiges of sadness, replacing it with pure incandescent rage. Just as I was about to throw my phone across the room, there was a tentative knock on my door. It was Chloe, my best friend, her arms laden with Chinese takeout and a six-pack of my favorite sour beer. She took one look at my tear-streaked face and the state of my apartment and silently pushed her way in, immediately pulling me into a fierce hug. "Oh, Elara," she whispered, stroking my hair. "That bastard. We settled on the floor surrounded by styrofoam containers. Chloe didn't try to minimize my pain or offer empty platitudes. She just listened, her presence a solid anchor in my stormy emotional sea. When my sobs finally subsided into sniffles, she gently opened her own phone. "Look," she said, her voice tight with anger. "Alex has been texting me all night." Alex was one of Liam's colleagues, a junior guy who Chloe knew casually through me. "He saw the whole thing last night, Alara. He was shocked." I swallowed, a knot forming in my throat. "What did he say?" Chloe scrolled through her messages, her brow furrowed. "He said Liam's been spinning some story at work today, telling everyone you were getting too serious, obsessed with marriage, too clingy." She trailed off, looking at me with disbelief. I stared at her, my mouth agape. Obsessed with marriage? He has a freaking Pinterest board dedicated to future home ideas that we created together. The hypocrisy was a punch to the gut. It wasn't just the public breakup, it was the deliberate, insidious smear campaign that followed. Then Chloe's expression grew more serious. "And that's not even the half of it, Alara. Alex dropped a bomb. Liam, he's not what he says he is." My heart hammered against my ribs. "What are you talking about?" "He's not a hotshot marketer, Alara," Chloe said, her voice barely a whisper. "He's an assistant, on probation. He's been taking credit for other people's work, apparently, and his superiors are on to him. He was almost fired a few weeks ago." The words hit me like a physical blow. The inflated stories from last night, the manic gleam in his eyes, the vague details he'd always given about his job. It all clicked into place, forming a terrifying mosaic of deception. The unsettling hum from the restaurant returned, louder, more chilling. It wasn't just arrogance. It was a carefully constructed lie, a house of cards he was barely holding together. This was more than just a bad boyfriend. This was someone fundamentally dishonest, living a fabricated reality. Just as the full weight of this revelation was settling upon me, my phone rang. I flinched, startled. It was an unknown number. "Hello?" I answered tentatively. "Alara, darling, it's Eleanor, Liam's mom." Her voice was warm, tinged with a slight concern. "Is everything all right, dear? Liam mentioned you two had a little tiff. Silly boys always overreacting, aren't they?" My blood ran cold. A little tiff? He told his mother we had a little tiff? I exchanged a stunned glance with Chloe. "Oh, yes, Eleanor," I stammered, my mind racing. "Just a small disagreement. You know how it is." I couldn't bring myself to shatter her perception of her son over the phone, not like this. "Well, that's a relief," she chirped. I was starting to worry. "Anyway, I was calling to remind you about Liam's birthday dinner on Saturday. You're coming, of course. We're all so looking forward to seeing you. And honestly," she lowered her voice conspiratorially, "we're hoping for some big news from you two." My jaw dropped. Big news? Like an engagement? The very idea was grotesque. He had publicly dumped me, smeared my name, lied about his entire life, and told his family we were just having a tiff and to expect big news. I pulled the phone away from my ear for a moment, covering the receiver. "Is he delusional?" I whispered to Chloe, "or just a pathological liar?" Chloe's eyes widened, a slow smile spreading across her face. "Both, I think. But big news? Oh, Ilara, this is too much." A dangerous glint entered her eyes. "You know what you have to do, don't you?" I looked at her, then down at my phone, still pressed to my ear, Eleanor waiting patiently on the other end. The anger, the humiliation, the shock of Liam's monstrous deceit, it coalesced into a fierce resolve. The idea of letting him get away with this, of letting his family believe his convenient lies, was suddenly unbearable. "Yes," I said, a new steely calm entering my voice as I brought the phone back to my ear. "Yes, Eleanor, I'll be there. Wouldn't miss it for the world." Chloe's smile broadened and she reached for another beer. "Perfect," she murmured. "You go, you show up, and you let the truth unfold. Naturally." We both knew naturally meant watching his carefully constructed world come crashing down. The thought, for the first time since yesterday, made me feel a glimmer of something beyond pain and rage, a chilling anticipation. The next morning, after a restless night punctuated by waves of anger and disbelief, I met Alex for coffee. He looked uncomfortable but determined. We chose a quiet corner booth, and I could barely hold my mug steady. "Alara, I'm so sorry about what happened," he began, his voice low. "Liam, he's really something else." "Tell me everything," I urged, my voice tight. "Chloe told me some things, but I need to hear it from you." Alex nodded, taking a deep breath. "Well, first off, about his job. He's not a marketing guru, not even close. He's an assistant, barely out of probation. His team he always brags about? Two interns who do most of the grunt work. The big presentations he led? He was literally just clicking through slides for our boss, Mr. Harrison. He's been taking his credit for other people's ideas for months. It's why he's on thin ice." The words painted a stark, pathetic picture of the man I thought I knew. All his grand stories, his inflated self-importance, it was all a carefully constructed facade. Then came another sting. "And he used to complain about you," Alex continued, wincing slightly. "He'd tell us you were high maintenance and always wanting expensive dates, expecting too much." I stared at him, my blood running cold. "High maintenance? Alex, I paid for most of our dates. He never even offered to split the bill half the time. I covered his share for concerts, vacations, even that ridiculous dinner last night." The sheer audacity, the double-faced deception, made my head spin. He wasn't just a liar about his career, he was a liar about me, twisting the narrative to make himself look good and me look like the villain. As we were talking, Alex's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then sighed. "Ugh, my boss, Mr. Harrison, needs me to come in Saturday evening. Some last-minute tweaks for a big pitch." A sudden, electrifying idea sparked in my mind. My eyes widened, a mischievous glint replacing the pain. "Alex," I said, leaning forward, my voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. What if you needed to drop something off at Liam's parents' house on Saturday evening? Something urgent for Mr. Harrison?" Alex blinked, then a slow, understanding smile spread across his face. "You mean during the birthday dinner?" I nodded, a wicked thrill shooting through me. The pieces were starting to fall into place. Just as we were finishing our coffee, my phone vibrated. It was a text from Liam. "Hey, we need to talk about what happened. I might have overreacted." I showed it to Alex, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "Overreacted?" Alex scoffed, shaking his head. "Overreacted is when you get annoyed because someone's late, Alara. Not when you publicly humiliate your girlfriend, lie about her to your colleagues, and then stick her with a $350 bill." His words validated every ounce of anger I felt. Liam's attempt at damage control was as pathetic as his lies. I deleted the message. I wouldn't dignify it with a response. He could sweat. He deserved to. The next 2 days were a blur of intense, almost obsessive preparation. Chloe came over and we dug through everything. Old text messages, forgotten photos, even the future home ideas Pinterest board. We highlighted every inconsistency, every lie, every instance of his self-aggrandizement. The evidence mounted a damning dossier of deceit. My fury transformed into a cold, calculated focus. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about exposing a toxic, manipulative person who thrived on lies. Chloe, ever the strategist, helped me pick out an outfit. Not the sapphire dress from that disastrous night. Instead, she pulled out a simple, elegant black dress, one that Liam had once called average. "Perfect," Shawita declared. "Understated, powerful. Let your words do the talking, not your clothes." It felt like a subtle act of defiance, reclaiming my style from his dismissive comments. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. My mind raced, consumed by dread and anticipation. What if I froze? What if his charisma charmed everyone again? What if he still managed to twist the narrative? Saturday noon, another text from Liam. "Looking forward to seeing you tonight. Wear something nice. My parents are excited." The audacity. He truly believed he could just sweep everything under the rug, play the victim of a little tiff, and pick up where he left off. I ignored it, just like the first one. My silence was its own weapon now. As I drove to his parents' house that evening, my hands were shaking on the steering wheel. A wave of doubt washed over me. Was I crazy for doing this? For walking into the lion's den? What if I was just making a fool of myself again? The fear was palpable, a cold knot in my stomach. But then I pictured his smirk, heard his condescending tone, remembered the sting of his public betrayal, and the insidious lies he'd spun. I thought of Eleanor, his kind mother, who was about to be terribly disappointed. Most importantly, I thought of Liam's casual cruelty, his belief that he could manipulate everyone around him with impunity. My resolve hardened, settling deep in my bones. No, not again. He wouldn't get to play the victim this time. He wouldn't get to escape the consequences of his actions. Not on my watch. I pulled up to Liam's parents' house, my heart thumping a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The familiar, welcoming glow of the porch light usually brought a sense of comfort, but tonight it felt like the entrance to a stage. I took a deep breath, adjusted the average black dress, and walked up to the door. Fashionably late, just as planned. The door swung open and Robert, Liam's dad, greeted me with a booming laugh and a warm hug. "Alara, darling, so glad you made it. Liam was worried you weren't coming." The scent of Eleanor's famous pot roast wafted from the kitchen, a comforting aroma that usually made my mouth water. Tonight it just made my stomach clench. A pang of genuine sadness hit me. Despite Liam, I genuinely liked his family. This would likely be the last time I saw them, and the thought twisted in my gut. As I stepped inside, the living room fell silent. Liam was standing by the fireplace, chatting with his younger sister, Sophie, and a couple of other relatives. When his eyes landed on me, his face froze. The casual smirk he usually wore vanished, replaced by a mixture of pure panic and utter surprise. It was glorious. He detached himself from the group, striding over with a forced smile that didn't reach his eyes. He gave me a stiff, almost imperceptible hug, pulling me close just enough to whisper in my ear, his voice tight with barely contained fury. "You actually came. What are you doing here? We need to talk. Privately." I pulled back, flashing him my sweetest, most innocent smile. Then raising my voice just enough for everyone in the quiet living room to hear, I said, "I wouldn't miss his birthday for anything, Liam, especially since you've been telling everyone we had big news to share." I emphasized big news with a bright, expectant tone. Eleanor, who had just emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron, clapped her hands together excitedly. "Oh, Elara, that's wonderful. I just knew you two would sort things out." Robert chuckled. "Big news, eh? So grandkids, then." Sophie, Liam's sister, gave me a long, knowing look from across the room, a hint of a smirk playing on her lips. She always saw through Liam's bullshit, which made me feel a tiny bit better. Liam tried to grab my arm, to steer me towards a quieter corner, his face a mask of desperation. But Eleanor was already calling out, "Everyone, dinner's ready. Come, sit down." She ushered us towards the dining room, a flurry of maternal energy. I settled into my usual spot next to Liam, opposite Sophie. The formal dining table felt like battlefield. Just as I unfolded my napkin, my phone buzzed discreetly in my purse. I glanced down. "Alex. On my way. 15 minutes out." A surge of adrenaline coursed through me. The clock was ticking. Liam, meanwhile, was practically vibrating with suppressed rage. He leaned in, his voice a low hiss. "What are you doing here? I thought after the restaurant it was clear." I cut him off, my voice sugar-sweet but loud enough for Sophie, seated directly across from us, to hear clearly. "Oh, I wouldn't miss the chance to tell your family about what really happened at that restaurant, Liam. I'm sure they'd love to hear that story." His face drained of all color, turning a ghastly shade of white. The confident facade he'd maintained for his parents cracked, revealing the panicked boy underneath. Eleanor, oblivious to the silent war being waged at the table, bustled in with the steaming pot roast, her cheerful chatter filling the sudden, thick silence. The first 20 minutes of dinner were excruciating. Liam desperately tried to control the conversation, rattling off questions about everyone else's lives, steering clear of any topic that might involve him or, God forbid, us. Every few seconds, his eyes would dart to me, a warning glance that silently dared me to speak. I just smiled pleasantly, picking at my food, enjoying the slow burn of his discomfort. Then, inevitably, Eleanor beamed at her son. "Oh, and we heard about your big promotion, Liam. So proud of you, darling." Robert and I were just saying how you're always crushing those targets. I almost choked on my water. Big promotion? That was what Liam had told them? Not only was he on probation as an assistant, but he was spinning this elaborate tale of career success. My gaze met Sophie's across the table. Her eyebrows were raised in silent skepticism. Liam, oblivious to the storm brewing around him, puffed out his chest, completely buying into his own lie. "Yeah, Mom, it's been a busy few weeks," he said, affecting an air of modesty that didn't quite convince. "Crushing targets indeed. Mr. Harrison is really grooming me for senior management. Big things coming." He even threw in some jargon he must have picked up from actual marketers. He was digging his own grave with every word, completely unaware that the shovel was already in my hand. If you've been on the edge of your seat so far, trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. The lies are about to crumble, and believe me, it's a spectacle. Stick around to the very end to see the full fallout, and if you're enjoying this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss any more of my stories. The conversation eventually shifted back to Liam's supposed career triumphs. Robert, always keen on business, piped up, "So, Liam, how's that big Johnson account going? The one you were so excited about?" Liam, caught off guard, stammered a vague response. "Oh, the Johnson account, it's progressing. Lots of moving parts, you know how it is, high-level stuff." He waved a dismissive hand, attempting to change the subject. Across the table, Sophie caught my eye, a skeptical eyebrow raised, confirming my suspicions. She knew. Eleanor, sensing an opening, clapped her hands again. "Well, with all this success and you two clearly back on track, darling, we were so excited about that big news Alara mentioned. Taking the next step, perhaps?" Before Liam could weave another convoluted lie, his grandma Agnes, a tiny woman with absolutely no filter, interjected from the end of the table. "So are you two moving in together or what? Because Liam said, you were looking at apartments together." My eyes widened. Another lie. We'd looked at a few places, but only in the context of future dreams. Never anything concrete. Liam's face was beginning to flush, a mottled red. He tried to divert the conversation, desperately. "Oh, Grandma, not now, but speaking of work, the company just gave me a new corporate card for all my business expenses. Pretty standard for someone in my position, you know." He shot a triumphant look at me, as if this tiny detail somehow proved his fabricated success. "Oh, a corporate card, how fancy," I said, my voice dripping with false admiration. "Speaking of dinners, Liam, you took me to this amazing restaurant last week. The one where you met up with Marcus and Ben. What was it called again, honey?" I paused, letting the implication hang in the air, a silent challenge. I watched Liam's jaw clench, his eyes flashing a silent warning. He knew exactly what I was doing. Just then the doorbell chimed. Perfect. My heart leaped. This was it. Eleanor, ever the gracious hostess, got up to answer it. "Now who could that be?" "Hey, ma'am," she wondered aloud. Moments later, her voice rang out. "Alex, darling, what a lovely surprise." Alex walked into the dining room, looking suitably apologetic, a slim folder clutched in his hand. "Mrs. Miller, I'm so sorry to interrupt your dinner. Mr. Harrison needs these urgent documents delivered to Liam. Said it couldn't wait." He gave Liam a very convincing, slightly harried look. Liam's eyes narrowed, a desperate attempt to glare Alex into silence. But it was too late. Robert, ever the hospitable one, insisted, "Nonsense, Alex. Come, sit. Have some roast. We're all family here tonight." He gestured to the empty seat right beside me. Alex shot me a quick, almost imperceptible nod as he took the seat. The stage was set. Eleanor dished out a plate for Alex, and he politely accepted. Robert, completely oblivious to the brewing storm, turned to Alex. "So Alex, you work with Liam, right? Tell us about that big presentation Liam supposedly led." "The Johnson account, I believe." Alex took a bite of pot roast, then carefully set down his fork. "Oh, the Johnson account presentation," he began, his voice calm and professional. "Yes, it was a big one. Mr. Harrison delivered it himself, of course. Liam and the rest of the team provided support, mainly setting up the slides and gathering background data." He gave Liam a small, almost imperceptible smile. The air in the room thickened. Eleanor and Robert exchanged a confused glance. Liam's big presentation was suddenly just setting up slides. I decided to lean in. Yes, Liam's always so modest about his work, I said, turning to Alex. He was telling us all about his big promotion. It sounds like he's doing incredibly well, doesn't it? My voice was sweet, innocent, a perfect foil to the bomb I was about to drop. Sophie, who had been silently observing the whole exchange, now spoke up, her voice cutting through the polite pretense. She looked directly at Alex, her eyes sharp. Alex, if you don't mind me asking, what exactly is Liam's current title at the company? The silence that followed was deafening. The clinking of forks stopped. Every eye in the room was on Alex, then on Liam. Alex hesitated for a fraction of a second, his gaze flicking to me. I gave him a tiny encouraging nod. Then Alex took a deep breath. Liam, he said, his voice clear and unwavering, is an administrative assistant in the marketing department. The words hung in the air, a final, brutal blow. Eleanor gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Robert's jovial expression crumbled, replaced by confusion and disappointment. Grandma Agnes just stared, her eyes wide. Liam's face was a masterpiece of horror. He stammered, attempting to recover. It's a stepping stone, Dad. An important role. Alex is new. He doesn't understand the corporate structure. I'm being groomed for bigger things, I told you. But it was too late. The dam had broken. His family, once so eager to believe his inflated stories, now looked at him with dawning suspicion. Administrative assistant, Robert repeated, his voice devoid of warmth. But you told me you had a team, a corner office, a big promotion. Eleanor's voice was laced with hurt. And the Johnson account? You said you were leading it. The questions rained down on him, each one a nail in the coffin of his carefully constructed lies about promotions, teams, and his entirely fabricated corner office. His world was unraveling, piece by agonizing piece. Just as the full weight of Alex's revelations settled over the dining table, Eleanor returned from the kitchen, beaming, a beautifully decorated birthday cake in her hands. She set it down, completely unaware that her son's carefully constructed world had just imploded. Liam, meanwhile, was trying desperately to play the victim, looking at his father with whining, wounded eyes, but Robert, his face etched with disappointment, held up a hand, silencing him. Liam, he said, his voice quiet but firm, I think we need to have a family discussion about honesty. That was the spark. Liam's composure shattered. He exploded in a full-blown temper tantrum, his face contorting in rage. This is her fault, he shrieked, pointing an accusing finger at me, then at Alex. You two planned this. You're trying to ruin my life. He slammed his fist on the table, knocking over his water glass, sending a cascade of ice and water across the pristine white tablecloth. His voice rose to a furious crescendo. A girl like you, he spat, his eyes blazing with malice, should be grateful he even bothered with me. It was the exact phrase he'd used at the restaurant, a cruel echo that sliced through the stunned silence. But this time I didn't flinch. A surprising calm settled over me. I met his furious gaze, my voice steady and clear. The only thing I was grateful for, I said, looking him dead in the eye, was finally seeing who you really were. He stared at me for a beat, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. Then, with a guttural roar, he pushed his chair back violently, sending it skittering across the floor. I can't believe this, he screamed, storming out of the dining room. A loud crack echoed as the front door slammed shut behind him, the force enough to send a decorative plate tumbling from a nearby shelf, shattering on the floor. The silence that followed was unnerving, almost peaceful after Liam's eruption. Eleanor, her face pale, stared at the broken plate, then at me, her eyes filled with unshed tears. Robert looked utterly defeated. Laura, Alex, Eleanor finally whispered, her voice choked with emotion. I am so sorry. I don't know what to say. Robert nodded gravely. We had no idea. He always told us what we wanted to hear. They insisted I stay for cake. And so, in a surreal turn of events, we all sat around the table, a newly formed, silent alliance, eating Liam's birthday cake without Liam. Eleanor, her voice trembling, confided in me. He's always been a little ambitious, but I never imagined this. My own son living such a lie. I admitted to ignoring some red flags myself, to choosing to believe the version of him I wanted to see. Robert, still looking shell-shocked, simply thanked me for my honesty, his gratitude laced with deep sadness. Alex walked me to my car, the night air cool and crisp. "I'm sorry you had to go through that, Alara," he said genuinely. "But at least they know now." He then filled me in on the full extent of Liam's work troubles. He'd been given a final warning for termination, effectively on his last chance. Mr. Harrison found out about some financial discrepancies related to the corporate card he was bragging about. Alex explained. It was just a matter of time. I drove home feeling emotionally drained but incredibly light, like shedding a tight, uncomfortable bra at the end of a long day. The truth was out. The burden lifted. But as I pulled into my driveway, my phone buzzed. A text from Liam. "You've ruined everything. This isn't over." I didn't hesitate. I blocked his number. The next morning, my phone began to blow up. 13 missed calls. Eleanor, Robert, Sophie, Alex, a flurry of frantic messages. Eleanor's voicemail was particularly distressed. Liam, in a drunken rampage, had shown up at an ex-girlfriend's apartment, screaming obscenities and sending unhinged messages. But the most chilling detail, he'd messaged Ben, one of the guys from the restaurant, threatening revenge on me, and, in his drunken state, had posted my home address to Ben. Ben, horrified, had immediately called Eleanor. Within an hour, Eleanor and Sophie were at my door, their faces etched with fear and concern. They confirmed Liam's pattern, detailing how he'd been creating a fictional self, exaggerating, and outright lying since college. "He changes his story depending on who he's talking to," Sophie explained, always trying to be the most impressive person in the room. Just as they were assuring me they'd speak to Liam, Alex arrived, looking equally worried. "He's blowing up my phone," Alex said, "accusing me of everything. He might come here, Alara." Almost on cue, my building manager appeared at my door, looking flustered. "Ms. Vance, there's a gentleman in the lobby yelling your name. He's making quite a scene." Liam, he had found me. The horror mystery thread that had felt distant suddenly felt very real, very close. I glanced at my phone, a new Instagram notification. Liam had tagged me in an unflattering story, a blurry, zoomed-in photo of me from that terrible dinner, captioned "The Real Alara, Ungrateful." It was pathetic, but I found myself laughing, the absurdity of his childish rage making it almost amusing. Then, heavy, slurred thumps echoed from my front door. Liam was pounding on it, screaming threats, his voice thick with alcohol. "Get out here, Ilara, you ruined everything," he roared, followed by more incoherent insults. My heart pounded, but my hands were steady as I dialed security. "I need someone to the third floor. Unit 3. I have a trespasser making threats." Within minutes, security was there, taking control of the situation. Eleanor, her face stained with tears, but her resolve firm, went down to deal with her son, her voice surprisingly strong as she guided him out of the building. Alex stayed with me, and we shared a bottle of wine, processing the chaotic events, the adrenaline slowly receding. Chloe, alerted by my frantic texts, arrived later, ready to guard my door if needed. The night ended with a strange mix of fear, relief, and a budding sense of camaraderie. Weeks passed. Liam was fired from his job, just as Alex predicted. He eventually moved back in with his parents, then to another state entirely. A clean slate, no doubt, for another round of lies. He tried contacting me through various fake social media accounts, but I blocked each one. I even ran into him once at Target, his eyes vacant, his appearance disheveled. He saw me, hesitated, then quickly turned and walked away, a ghost of his former self. In the aftermath, I found an unexpected friendship with Alex, someone who truly understood the ordeal. The whole experience was terrifying, exposing a darkness I hadn't known existed in someone I loved. But I was grateful. Grateful for the truth, for the escape, for seeing Liam's true self before it was truly too late. It was a harrowing journey, but I emerged stronger, wiser, and forever changed. So, there you have it. The man I'd spent 2 years building a life with, Netflix marathons, awkward family dinners. Even that terrible couples yoga class, publicly called me ugly in front of us friends, dumped me at a restaurant, and left me to pay for the dinner. A girl like you should be grateful I even dated you, he'd sneered. But instead of breaking, I smiled. I calmly waited. And that wait led to the unraveling of every single lie he'd told, culminating in that explosive birthday dinner where his carefully constructed world came crashing down. That morning after, my phone really did blow up with 13 missed calls. You guys, I'm still processing what happened last weekend. Like I keep replaying it in my head and wondering if I somehow imagined the whole thing. But nope, my maxed out credit card and the ice cream stains on my couch confirm it was very real. Liam's threats, his drunken rampage, his pathetic attempts at revenge only solidified the monster lurking beneath his charming facade. He eventually moved away, taking his web of deceit with him. The relief was immense, like finally being able to breathe after years underwater. It was terrifying to discover who he truly was, but I'm profoundly grateful I saw it before it was too late. I came out stronger, wiser, and with an unexpected friendship.